Felipe marking GPS points where there's illegal mining happening. So you can really get some good recent photos of what's happening on the ground. All right, so tonight's agenda, we'll go over who's who at CFS and FSC. You might have seen in various emails those two different acronyms and wondered what that meant. So we'll just briefly look at that. Look at the territories with maps. Many of you have been in Ecuador or are in Ecuador now. Some of you have visited maybe a long time ago. For me, I visited last winter and I still didn't know where I was. So it's very helpful for me to have maps all the time, just to know where exactly we're talking about. And then I'll pass it over to Phil. Will be talking about territories and the maps, as well as who's who at what the programs are happening at FSC in Quito at the moment. And Phil will also go more in depth into the park ranger program, which is what he's been so involved with. So CF, it's always backwards. The Cofan Survival Fund, CSF, in the United States, and the Fundación Sobrevivencia, Cofan, based in Quito. That's what those two acronyms are. And this is what those organizations look like. So the board is based here in the US, and we do fundraising here to support the programs of the FSC in Quito. So we have the staff here. And these are just a few of the programs, the main programs that are occurring currently, but there's always so much more going on with the Fundación. All right, and I will pass it over to Phil. Mike, do we have Phil here?
Yes, I saw
Great.
at least some Felipe in the.
Okay, perfect. And I'll just say one last thing before handing it over. We would love to have any questions that you have as they occur. Please just send them into the chat, and our board member Danica will be kind of monitoring those and condensing them so that we can get through them at the end of this portion of the program. All right, I'll hand it over to Phil.
Hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Well, hello everyone and welcome. First of all, I want to thank all of you for joining tonight. And also I want to thank you guys for supporting us, because I know a lot of you guys have been supporting us throughout the last years. And as Serena mentioned, I will be leading CSF, FSC projects here in Ecuador for the next few years and maybe longer. Like Serena mentioned, I've already been working closely with these projects with my dad. And so this is just, yeah, it'll be a continuation of the work that I'm doing, just that we won't have my dad with us. Okay, so to start off, just to kind of give you guys a sense of where we're working in, we're in the country of Ecuador, and we're in the northern area near Colombia on the northern border, in the area that's called Sucumbíos and Napo are the two provinces that we have territories in as Cofans. We go to the next slide, we can have a closer look at the Cofan territories. So we work in 6 different Cofan territories at the moment. We work in Cayambe-Coca, Bajo, which is the first territory starting from your left, I guess it would be, in the upper section. I don't know if you can point to it, Serena. Yeah, right there. And right up above it is Rio Cofanes, where the blue dot is. And then farther up north, near the Colombian border, we got Cofan Bermejo. And then as we go downriver, this is basically the headwaters that we were talking about. And as we go downriver, the Rio Guarico, we hit Lubuno, which is another Cofan community. Further down, yep. Then we go farther down and reach Tureno. And we go farther down and reach Savalo, which is in the Cuyabeno Reserve. So those are the different territories that we're working on as FSC CSF. There's approximately, in total, we've got approximately 450,000 hectares that we manage as Cofans. That would round out to be about 1 million acres. We have approximately 1,500 people, 1,500 Cofans that live on the Ecuadorian side. And it's not an exact number yet. We haven't done a census recently, and there's a lot of Cofans that are part of the community, but marry out and go to different communities. So it's hard to keep track of the population. Next slide. Okay, so the first project that I'm going to be talking about is the Lifeboat Garden project. The projects that we work on vary and depend on the needs of the Cofan Nation as they face this ever-evolving world. And it also depends on the support that we receive to face these challenges from outside donations. So the first project, the Lifeboat Garden project, well, first of all, I want to give special thanks to Claire's dad for supporting this project through the First Analysis Institute. This project was developed by my dad and mom. My mom loves planning. She, gets down to the jungle and she just starts planning. You don't see her until late in the afternoon, and she comes all sweaty and all muddy from all the planting that she's done of all different plants. She plants everything from consumable plants to ornamental plants to medicinal plants. So seeing this, Dad helped develop this idea, this project that now my wife, my brother's wife, my Cofan aunts, uncles, my cousins are all taking on to and helping out with. But the idea is this isn't the first plant project that an indigenous community does, but the difference is that we've decided to do it in a location where it's a lot cooler and it's a little higher than most of the Cofan territories. And the idea is that, as we face global warming and changes in temperatures and the environment, we're looking for an area where a lot of these plants will have hopefully a better chance of surviving in the future as climates change in the Amazon. And so the Lifeboat Garden has tons of plants. I think the last count was like over 200 different types of plants that are medicinal or are useful for the Cofans. And those are all planted in this area called Loreto. The women, the people that I mentioned before who are working on it, they're not only planting these plants, they're not only bringing it from the different communities, from the different areas that we showed you on the map and planting in this area, they're also collecting all the information behind these plants and documenting it and trying to preserve that knowledge so that future generations can continue to have access to it. We're also in that area building some infrastructure so that people can visit the place and not have to travel, all these little different communities to see all these different plants that the Cofan people have used throughout centuries. And this would also give a chance for future Cofan generations to come and see these plants as well in a single place. So that's our first project. There in the photos, you can see the construction that we're doing there. We're trying to set up a building where people can come and stay a few days. On the right, you see some coffee beans, yellow coffee beans that grow really well there. In the middle picture, there's chonta, which is a palm fruit. You've got banana plants that are obviously essential for Cofans. You got some yucca in there, you got sugar cane, you've got some flowers, and you probably have a bunch of other medicinal plants that look exactly like just, normal plants in a garden, but have special purposes inside the Cofan world. Our next project that I'll be talking about is the Seguro Campesino project. Here, once again, I want to give special thanks to All People's Church for supporting this project. The purpose of this project is to provide healthcare insurance for Cofan families. At the moment, we have 63 families signed up in the Seguro Campesino program. This gives Cofan families access to the ES medical program in the country. Ecuador does have a free health and medical service through the Ministerio de Salud, but to be honest, it's not that good. So for people who legally work here in the country and are signed up in the government system, get access to the ES health system, which is supposed to be a little better than the Ministerio de Salud system since it's a paid system. And so we've signed up a bunch of families so that they've got, this double protection, I guess, when it comes to different health issues. Another part of this project is that we also provide one of our personnel from the Fundación, Carlos Menendez. He works really closely with this project and with the people in this project, and he helps Cofans navigate the health system and the medical system that the ES has. But not only that, we've recently, through the work that he's been doing, he's also been helping people navigate the government medical system, the health system, the Ministerio de Salud. He's also helped navigate different medical institutions for cancer treatment, also different institutions and private medical services too. So when a Cofan has a medical emergency and does not know how to deal with all the bureaucracy that goes on in a medical system and an insurance system, they call Carlos, and Carlos basically leads them step by step through the whole procedure and has done that for many families up to the state and continues to do that with a lot of the families, Cofan families that we help out. And in the pictures, this is one of the activities that we do is we coordinate medical brigades to the different communities. A lot of the Cofan communities are difficult to access when you don't know the area. So us being people at the Fundación, us being since we work in these areas, we help the medical teams get to the communities and provide basic health services in the community and basic medications to the people so that the people don't have to move out of the community. Continuing with our projects, our next project is our education project. Since the very beginning, FSC CSF has always believed in dual education, in Cofan education and in Western education. We need knowledge of both worlds to continue to be Cofans in today's world. Back when FSC started, we brought up over 20 kids from different communities. This was back in, I think, the year 2000, 2001, 2002, to get better education here in Quito, in the capital of Ecuador. I was included in that group. Not all the students finished high school, but quite a few did. And these students, even the ones that didn't finish all their schooling, went back and became important leaders in their communities. And so seeing this, we decided that, we need to give Cofan kids the chance to get even a better education so that they can be better leaders in their communities. So recently, thanks to Elizabeth Louise Smith Fund and Leopoldo Bachmann Foundation, we have been pushing for Cofans to get college education. And at the moment, we have 2 that have already graduated. We have 1 student that graduated in tourism, and the other student graduated in engineering and health and security. And currently, we have 6 students that are just started this year. Actually, 1 student is going to be finishing this year, but we have 5 students that started this year. Men and women, they're studying here in Quito and different universities that are around the city. Most of these students already have established families, so they come up with their kids. And so we're also providing education for their kids. So, back when we started, we brought up 20 Cofan kids, and my parents were actually trying to care for all these kids. But this time we've got families that are already up here so they can take care of their own kids. So it's a continuation of the project, and it's been working great till now. And our hope is to create more Cofan leaders that have quality education and that can navigate both worlds, and hopefully provide a better future for our people at Cofan. And so here in the picture, up on the right, the bigger picture, that's where the students are that are currently up here in Quito. The guy in the middle, the 7th person, he just graduated this year. So, yeah. Next. Okay, and now let's move on to one of our more important projects. Although, I mean, all these projects have been super important to the Cofan Nation. But our Park Guard program in terms of conservation has been super successful. Back in 2002, 2003, we started this program to better defend our territories. Since the beginning, my dad has always helped defend our territories. I mean, he basically dropped out of college to come back and defend the territory there in Dureno, one of the first territories that he worked in. And since the beginning, he's been defending our territories against all the threats that continue to increase for all the Cofan territories. So he started training Cofans to use tools such as GPS, maps, and other resources that the Western world has. He trained these to the Cofans so that they can defend themselves better. This also meant taking an active role in the government system. So we started working closely with the Ministry of Environment. We also started defending more our rights as Cofans, and we were able to take back huge territories. We basically, during these years, we doubled our territory. Before we started with a Park Guard program, we had less than 200,000 hectares of land in Cofan name. And with this program, we were able to basically double, and right now have the 450,000. But with that said, I mean, the 450,000 still is facing a lot of threats. And so we've been continuing to work on getting the Park Guard program back up, because around 2014, the funding did diminish for this program. Luckily, their variants of this project did go off. I'm sure some of you have heard about the Guardia Indígenas, the Defensores de los Indígenas. And there's all these different communal community organized programs that seek to defend their territories. But sadly, they're not as strong as the initial program that we had. Times have changed and threats have changed. So we think it's super important to reactivate this program and improve it so that we can face the new challenges that we're facing as Indigenous people in the Amazon. Over the last few years, we have had startup funding to reactivate this program, thanks to Asimeth and Christina and Dan Hauser Foundation, and recently from Moore Foundation. So with the funding that we've been able to receive, we've been trying to reactivate this program. in April, we're going to have a course for 40 Cofan park guards here in Quito, and we'll be training them everything from GPSs, using solar chargers, using drones, since that's the new way of defending territories. We'll also be teaching select groups on using more mapping tools as it gets more complicated to defend our territories. Beforehand, there was quite a bit of forest, so you go in and create a boundary trail, and if it wasn't exact, it didn't really matter because probably your neighbor was not going to do any extractive operations there. But these days, they go to the last meter, so it's like it's become much more critical to make sure that we know where our territories are and look for better ways of protecting it. And these days we've got better access to satellite imagery that can also help us protect our different territories. So all that is what we're working towards with the Park Guard program, and depending on questions, I can answer more stuff about it. Here in the pictures, we're taking some points in the jungle of where there's been new trails that have been made either for hunting, for taking out lumber, or for mining, for all these different activities. And in the other pictures, we've got the park guards going in with their backpacks. When we go into the forest, we go in for about 15 days minimum out in the forest to patrol these different territories. Because, we're talking about vast territories, and most of the territories are pretty rugged. And yeah, so that's a brief summary of some of the projects we are working on. We also have some other projects that are not mentioned here, such as our Charapa project, our Eco Canoa project, which is making canoes out of fiberglass, that also are intended for the development of the Cofan people that live here in Ecuador. There continues to be a lot of issues that indigenous people face in this challenging world and this changing world, and for the Cofan, it's no different. We're constantly facing new threats. So we are super grateful for all the support you guys are providing, and we hope that you continue to support us. The loss of my dad is going to make it more difficult for us here at FSC-CSF, but he has trained many Cofans on how to care for the Amazon. So we will continue caring for our part of the Amazon that he left entrusted to us.
Thank you so much, Phil. I think there were a lot of questions that came in the chat. Danica, are you there to give us some of those questions?
Interestingly enough, we don't have any questions in the chat, I don't believe. So I don't know if you want to take verbal questions or wait until the end for that.
That sounds good. I think we've reserved this time now for questions. So this is when we should do that. If people have questions that they want to put in the chat or raise your hand. I think one thing that I was hoping you could talk about is just a little bit of what it's like on these 10-day missions. Like what does that actually look like when you're out doing these patrols?
Yeah, so for sending out our park guards, it is essential to have our support team here in Quito that coordinates all the movement. Because usually we have in our patrols, when we go out into the forest, it's usually people from all different communities that come to work in these specific areas. And so when we send out a group of 10 people, we would probably have at least 3 communities involved in it. So our first challenge is getting everybody to the location where they're going to be working. And then we have to make sure that we provide them with all their needs, which would be for camping, the plastics, tarps, all the food. We try to balance the food because, I mean, to be in the forest working for 15 days or 10 days, whatever, how many ever days you are in there, you're working pretty hard, and being in the forest, it really affects your body. So good nutrition is also very necessary when you're out in the forest. And so once we get all that together, we get all the people together and we set the task, which will be, clear the boundary, or if we heard about some illegal activity, to go check that out. They go out and basically camp in the forest wherever they're supposed to get to, or whatever their activity is, and we'll camp in the forest. Usually from a certain camp, you'll do about 2 days of activities from a single camp, and then you move camp to the next site and continue to do that throughout your time in the forest.
And one of the questions in the chat is, what happens when you do detect illegal land usage?
It depends on what we detect. That's where, once again, our personnel here at the Fundación play a major role. We try to not, get into direct conflict on grounds. Usually our park guards will talk to whoever's, doing the illegal activity and say, hey, you're not supposed to do this, and try to grab some names and, like I say, pinpoint where this activity is going on, and then we'll report it back to us, and then we report it to the different authorities here in the cities. That could be to the Ministry of Environment, that could be to the police or to the military, whoever we think can help us control this activity. But more than that, I mean, just having presence in these territories, scares away a lot of these illegal activities.
Another park guards question is it only men who go out on the patrols, or is it also women?
It's men and women, and sometimes we have even little kids that will go along when they're old enough to go along with their families. So sometimes it's a whole family thing that they go along on these patrols.
There are a couple of budget questions. Maybe Mike, you could possibly answer this as well. What is the current operating budget, and have the USAID cuts affected the CSF or FSC in any way?
Well, I'll tag team this one with Serena. Serena is our treasurer and has a better notion of how much we bring in, but it varies radically from year to year. I must say that over the past few years, we've been getting better and better every year. But it can, what were we at last year, Serena? I think you had a number.
Yeah, I think we were at, well, now that you asked me the number, I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head, but I think 190 was one that I'm remembering.
Yeah.
And that we were kind of shooting for as an operating budget.
Yeah, so we try to, there are various activities to keep the core members of our team going, which are the foundation of everything we do. Um, we need around that much money, $200,000 a year. Um, and also we consider education to be a core activity. And, we've been lucky with the generosity of the Bachman Foundation and have 5 or 6 Cofan students in, and that is been a little bit over $100,000 a year. But it really depends if we get grants, if we get big donations. Park guard program can be very small, can be very large. To be what it needs to be as an organization, we need about it sounds insane, but $1 million a year to really have 50 park guards out there protecting territory constantly. Felipe and I were, and Ugo Lucitante, another Cofan board member here and doctoral student in anthropology at UT San Antonio with me. We're just talking about a land invasion today. And that happens because the Cofan guards can't always be out at all times. So um, Randy was a master at getting amazing things done with little amounts of money. And the beauty of the park guards, especially, is you have amazingly talented and committed and physically fit people like Felipe and Cofan folks who could do this work committed for small amounts of money in a way that nobody else could who isn't Cofan. So it's one of the most efficient organizations I've ever seen in terms of doing conservation. By the way, our American Cofan Survival Fund branch fundraising is totally voluntary. We have nobody to pay for fundraising, so it's zero overhead. So that's a long answer, but $200,000, we can keep a lot of stuff going. If we had 1 million, we could protect this land perfectly and get students through college and all these other projects happening. But it radically depends on how much comes in.
Danica, I saw one question about the turtles, and I think you're the best person maybe to talk about that a little bit if you're.
Sure. Well, Felipe can probably talk about it better than I could, but
Yeah.
and give him a minute of a break. And the Turtle Project, if you don't know about it, is a conservation of what had been an threatened turtle population. The population in the surrounding rivers in the Cofan territory had really dramatically dropped. About 30 years ago, the Cofan people noticed that and started this project where they began to collect turtle eggs and hatch them and raise the baby turtles in captivity and then release them into the river. And they were very, very successful at bringing the population back up to a point where they were no longer threatened in that area. And so that has been going on since I think the late 80s. And it's still going on. Serena and I and several other people visited the site when we were in Ecuador a year ago, and they have artificial beaches and pools where they raise the babies. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Felipe, but I don't think they're still doing quite as much monitoring and counting of the turtles partly because they've been so successful at repopulating and also partly because there's not enough funding to really do that at the moment. But it's been a really amazingly successful project. So it's still going. It's very cool. There was another question about what the political situation in Ecuador is right now and whether the Cofan feel the support of the government.
Who's going to tackle that one?
You want to try first, Phil, and then I'll jump in?
So you really can't depend on the government. That's been our experience with it. You have to force them to do stuff. And so when we had a full park guard program running, we were able to force them to do their job. But when we don't have an institution like that running, it's hard because as communities, it's way harder to push. But when we had, through the park guard program, one of the things that we were able to build was a national identity, which scares government officials and makes them do their job. So yeah, I mean, we, as the Fundación, try to we work close with the government, but we also, know that we can't depend on them all the time.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good answer. As some of you have probably seen in the press, Ecuador has changed pretty radically over the past 5 years. There's a lot of drug trafficking that's been going through, not coca production, but just movement of drugs from Colombia. And that has created a lot of corruption and a lot of danger for people like the park guards. So a lot of the battle is to make sure that, it's easy for a Ministry of Environment, reserve chief to get corrupted, and to have the Cofan park guard force out there constantly is essential, because they are going to do work that the Ministry of Environment can't do. If it weren't for the Cofans on the ground, none of these areas would be protected. And I also wanted to say politically and economically, and Ugo knows this more than everybody does, there are water rationing, electricity rationing. Ecuador is in very bad financial shape. Um, Many of us have Carlos Menendez, who you've heard of. He runs our Seguro Campesino project. He's an angel. I've tried to help a few people deal with cancer and other issues. All of that needs to come from us, unfortunately, these healthcare costs. The government guarantees you health, but it does not pay for everything. By the way, that slightly over $1 million number I shared would also include a truly functional healthcare program so that people don't have to go into debt to pay for cancer treatments like Randy was doing right before he died. I just spent $10,000 trying to save one woman from cancer, and she didn't make it. And there is an epidemic of cancer deaths, we believe, caused by oil contamination. The government has a responsibility to take care of indigenous peoples and others from these um, horrible diseases, but they just don't have the resources, and they never get it to the people at the bottom of the social ladder, which unfortunately are Cofan people. Ugo, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. You've had three grandparents of four get cancer, and one barely hanging on right now, right?
Yes, hi everyone. Yeah, just earlier today I was talking to my family and my wife and my daughter, Asha, and we were just talking about the water situation. There's close to 500 burning pits, mecheros, that have been burning for all these years, and there's this pools of pits of oil that are just seeping into the rivers. And right now, it's a rainy season, so everything that's, we were talking about the turtle project. There's this increase of large scale African palm and all the pesticides and the chemicals that they spray. But surprisingly, every time I go home, Sabalo is the only place where you will see the freshwater turtles bathing in the sun. And people have been noticing that, and I've started to notice that as well. So yes, we are in bad shape. I do not feel safe, and with everything happening, my grandmother is sick right now, and so it's certainly a concern.
Another question is, to what extent do the Cofan speak Spanish, and how important is it to be bilingual, or some people are multilingual as well?
I think most Cofans, you could say they're bilingual, but where education really helps out is, you say bilingual, there's most Cofans can do a simple conversation to buy something or to get around in the city or some. But when it comes to these issues where you're trying to defend your rights against the government or against these different what do you call it, amenazas,
Threats. Yeah.
threats, then you need a higher level of Spanish to be able to defend yourself, especially in a bureaucratic system in the cities where most of the legal stuff goes on.
I just wanted to
And I would
jump.
just
Oh, go ahead. We'll go.
Sorry, Kuma. When we were doing service for Randy over the weekends, some elders in the community were sharing their time, their work with Randy, and they were talking about how Randy just had this way, like he doesn't understand Spanish. He knows another level. And I guess the way that I understand it is like the academic world, the very technical, being able to hold on to the conversation such as environmental issues and so forth. So that was something that they had really they pointed out about Randy and his skill and the way that he was able to speak to mestizos and the international community and so forth.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the primary language of everyday life for almost all Cofan people is Aingé. It's the Cofan language. It's what you hear in every house. It's an isolate spoken only by the Cofan. And even though many people do speak Spanish, just like all of us, when we don't have perfect knowledge of a second language, we get shy, we get nervous. I talk to Cofan people about health problems. They explain it all. Then we go to talk to a doctor and they don't say 10% of what they just told me in Cofan. So it's really essential both to get the education program and create masters of Spanish. It's so important for political work, but just for everybody. But then to have people who can help, like Carlos Menendez and everybody else. If it weren't for him going in with people to the hospitals, people would not get the care. And unfortunately, there is still tremendous anti-Indigenous racism in Ecuador. My ritual sister, who died of bladder cancer just a couple weeks ago, they tricked her and her husband to signing themselves out of the hospital. They don't understand Spanish. They can't sign their names. They made them give a thumbprint and they were tossed out. Um, so it's Spanish is essential. Having somebody there who can do it because it's the language of the country is essential. That means people both need to learn it, and we need to have these intermediaries. Unfortunately, nobody's doing it but the Fundación Sobrevivencia Cofan, led by Felipe. And it's saving people's lives, and it's just essential. So yeah, they speak Spanish, but different languages. It's like me trying to give an academic paper in Spanish. It wouldn't sound very good. So,
I think we have maybe two more questions and then we can wrap up. One of them is, what kind of cooperation or collaboration, if any, do the COFAN receive from the indigenous organizations in Ecuador?
Bill?
Um, from indigenous organizations, as the Fundación Cofan, Cofan's Rail Fund, we don't work too close with them because there's just way too much politics that goes on, and they're constantly changing leaders, and it's a messy situation. So, I mean, the whole idea of the the Fundación Sobrevivencia Cofan from the beginning was to have an organization that could look out for the well-being of the Cofans without getting caught up in all these political stuff. Because we have a federation, a Cofan federation, but I mean, it's not working because of politics and because of disputes between communities and all that. So the Fundación has always, been kept a neutral position, looking at long-term uh, solutions for the Cofans and not, these short-term things that are uh, based on political stuff.
I'll just jump in here and say that the Cofan are one of the smaller indigenous ethnic groups in Ecuador and have never felt fully represented by the national indigenous movement. There are 150,000 Amazonian Quechua people. There are maybe 2,000 Cofan. Um, I see some other Ecuadorian specialists actually in here nodding their heads. They've often felt like clients who don't get their voices heard by organizations controlled by much more powerful and populous indigenous groups, and didn't even have their ethnic federation legalized until the 2000s, which is crazy compared to all the other indigenous peoples. So, I wish Ecuador's extremely powerful indigenous movement, the COFAN had a more prominent place, and they are working on it. There are Cofan people moving up the ranks, but like Felipe said, sometimes ethnic federations don't work, and you need an organization with people who've been doing jobs for 10, 20, 30 years with the know-how to actually get things done. And when you have shifting leadership and ethnic federations that don't have any budgets, there's only so much they can do for their people, which is why the FSC has been so important for healthcare, environmental, land rights, and education projects. The ethnic federations don't do any of it, actually. They're dysfunctional, as Felipe said right now, for the COFAN.
I think our last question, and then maybe Mike, you can wrap it up for us. The last question is, do you find that the ecotourism into the Cofan area is helpful in spreading the word and helping kind of raise funding enthusiasm, or is it actually more invasive or expensive for the Cofan to support?
I think it's helpful, and actually, the whole reason why we do run we like our part-time job is to take tours down to our communities, and the whole reason why we do it is so that we can give this opportunity to people that are interested in our area to come get to know the place and get to see the work that we're doing in territory, get to see the people that uh, you that I mean, sometimes donors come, so yeah, you guys get to come see what we're actually doing, get a firsthand look. And so far, I think people, leave convinced that um, we're doing a good job of caring for our forest and for caring for our people.
See another question there.
Yes, one more question under the wire if we've got time. I think we have a couple minutes. So let's see, threats. Let's see, someone was reading about threats to outside researchers from organized crime and illegal miners and logging and drug traders. Is this a serious issue in the Cofan territory?
Yeah, I mean, even as Cofans, we receive threats in our different territories because legal activities, there's a lot of legal activities that go on in our territories. But you have to realize that there are some Cofan territories that are a lot less dangerous, like you could say, as far as threats go. And so, yeah, it depends on the territory, but there are some territories that uh, are hard to be in. But that's where, something like our park guard program really helped out. The reason why some of these places are getting dangerous is because we don't have that presence that we used to have. We've got our communities and our different territories, but our communities, they dedicate their time and subsistence farming and hunting and fishing, and they don't have time to go out and patrol and keep track of who's coming into their territories. And when we don't do that, we get sometimes illegal activity going on in these territories since they're forests. There's no one there, so people can do as they please sometimes. So that's where our partner program was also, a big help for the Cofan Nation. It made it a way safer place.
I add on to that the immense, I mean, yes, there are the nexus of illegal drug traffickers. They use illegal mining to both gain money and launder money. It's essential to their operations right now in Ecuador, and many people are afraid to go where they are to talk to miners. I mean, I feel like crying almost now. Randy was probably one of the bravest men I've ever met. He had no fear of dying. He almost died so many times, and just to see his son Felipe just looks like a nice looking young man here. He was kidnapped in 2012 for anti-mining activism and held for 40 days in captivity in Colombia and escaped by just running through the forest in the middle of the night and swimming back into Ecuador. And it was a miracle. We didn't think he'd make it. And here he is doing it again. The same stuff when it's even harder. Like you government park guards are too afraid to do this stuff. I mean, Felipe is just I'm just blown away by his dedication and his bravery. It's insane. It's not insane, Felipe. It's admirable. But to me, as a coward, as you know, I'm a coward. But it's just really incredible because these threats are real. But when, as Felipe said, if you have 50 guards out there and they know there is a 2,000 member indigenous nation that they believe is unified, that will come together to stop, what's going on, that will make them change their ways. That's what makes this park guard force so, I think, the most effective forest protection force in the world and one of the most rough places in the world. And Felipe's the head of it. He's been running it. He ran the park guard force well over a decade ago. And I asked him if he was still afraid, and he said a little bit, but he just does it. He just does it. It's amazing. So
Thank you all so much for joining us. Mike, would you like to say any last closing words for us?
yeah, I usually talk too much. I write those giant newsletters y'all get. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for supporting this organization right now. Everybody worried, is it going to continue when Randy dies? Because we can't believe Randy's dead. And it was him who started all of this. And the Cofan have been such an incredible success story. Everybody thought they would disappeared. They were the first, I think, only indigenous community in the Americas to throw a functioning oil company out of their territory. In Zabalo, Ugo, and Felipe's community, it is the most successful community-based conservation, indigenous community-based conservation system that I know of in the world. And the park guard force, like I said, is just one of a kind, and the shoestring budget they run on is amazing. And you need these dedicated, knowledgeable, strong people who know their territory so well to run it. Um, and just this vision that Randy always had of we need to be the people to take care of our territory. The state's not going to do it for us. We're going to do it. We need to be the ones producing our own PhDs and masters. Felipe is also getting his master's degree right now, studying our people and creating our own research institutions. We need to be the one, not outside conservation institutions that take 90% of a USAID project somebody mentioned. That 90% should be going to the FSC directly, and it would do amazing good if they got it directly. So Randy just wanted to put the Fundación right up there, and show the world what indigenous people can do if they have the resources. But they've used your resources, they've needed them, and protecting 1 million acres with sometimes $200,000 a year, it's unimaginable that it even happened. But we just want to keep growing. We're all still dedicated. And, like I said, it's they're what they do sometimes they can go for months without pay at sometimes, Felipe and everybody else, and they still do it. They shouldn't have to. They don't, Carlos Menendez doesn't have a vehicle to get people to the hospitals and stuff. He has to use a cab or a bus. So they need the help, but they're only here because of your help. It wouldn't have lasted without it. Nobody pays for these little things, grants, foundations. So thank you so much. I've been working with the Cofan for more than 30 years. I studied the Fundación as an academic. Randy said, "Come on in, look at my account books, look at everything, nothing to hide." And it's so inspiring. So it's just an amazing organization that I think all of us will do as much as we can to keep it growing and strong until we are no longer physically able to. But thanks so much for your support, and please spread the word and make sure Randy's legacy lives on because he created something really special and powerful. And Felipe is doing a great job continuing that. I can already see it in him. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye, thank you.
Perhaps for Felipe.